I started with a degree in human physiology, and in my final year of university, I said, I cannot do this.
Wow. Wow. So 3 years of doing human physiology. And then your final year, you're like, geez, I can't do this. This is not
I,
what I want. After investing all those years from 9 years old all the way out. Wow.
exactly.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
a solid 11 years of one path, one picture, one process. All your friends are in medical school or nursing school. Everyone you know is in the medical field.
Yeah.
And you come to the end and you realize, and it's so important for us to take that time to truly be honest with ourselves, because we need to build a life that we can wake up to every day and say, yes, this is who I want to be.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Meta Transitions. Today, we have with us La-Dana Manhertz-Smith. She is a beloved cousin. She's also a well-being coordinator at a high school in Washington. She's in her final year of her master's in clinical mental health counseling. She's also a certified positive psychology and well-being coach. Welcome to our show, La-Dana.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. And I just love the work that you're doing. And I love that I get to be a part of it. I'm so honored. I'm so honored. Like, look at you. It's so great to see you flourish.
Oh my God, it's so good to have you, La-Dana. Like I'm thinking of all the memories, and our years coming and doing our own thing and getting to this place. And I remember when I was doing my master's in counseling and you told me that you're doing your master's too. And you were like, oh my God, maybe one day we'll work together. And at the time, the truth is, I was like, I don't know if I'm even going to finish this program when you said that. And then look at it. Look at us now. We are actually doing exactly what you said. And it's so great to be able to do that.
It
Yeah.
is, and it's powerful that you raised that. When we started together, we were doing the clinical counseling, and from the introduction, you can hear I am now in my final year, which I love that. That's what the conversation is going to be about. Transitions and being okay with making those transitions in our lives and
Mhm.
allowing our lives to fall into place sometimes without necessarily being afraid of what that might look like. And again, even though that change was made, and we'll talk about that a bit soon, but here we are in, the same space,
Yes.
still on the same path, taking different roads to get there. And it's so beautiful to be able to be a part and to continue to be a part of your story as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right. So, Ladena, let's get into it. Please tell us what is your transition story and how, it sounds like we're going on a career transition spin here as it pertains to school, what you're doing now as a well-being coach and, in counseling. So tell us a bit more about
Absolutely. How much time you guys have? Because I can be here for a whole day.
that.
Okay, so let's take our time and work it through, because I think understanding the different stages will kind of help to understand why at this point in my life I've adopted this model for such a time as this. For those who may not necessarily be religious or Christian or spiritual, that's from the story of Esther, where she was placed as queen. She was put in this position of queen, and without her even realizing that there was an assignment that was going to be on her life, where she as queen would be able to rescue the Jews back in the one of the Bible stories. And from that, her uncle said to her, and that this phrase has now really informed the way I approach my life now. He said to her, maybe you were placed here for such a time as this.
Yes.
Throughout my life, I've begun to realize that I've been placed on multiple assignments for such a time as this. And while I was in that moment, it may not have felt like it, But now that, you know, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
Now that I get to look back on that, I get to realize how each part of that assignment was providing me with something while giving me the opportunity to provide others with what they may have needed for such a time as this.
Yes, man, I really love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I've looked over my life and looked over all the transitions that my life has taken, all the different places that my life has gone, I've now settled into this approach to my life for such a time as this. Recognizing that at different stages in my life, I've been on assignment. And there's something that I've either had to offer someone in that space or something that I needed to be ready for the next step that my life would take. And so starting out in my life, you know, back when we were younger, many of you may not have been raised in the Caribbean, but if you were, you understand that you have to make your life decision from as early as 9 years old. You have to know what you're going to do in your life.
Yep. Those exams, really, you know, you're preparing for which high school you're going to go to, and then that high school is going to prepare you for which university you're going to go to, or, you know, your life is going to sort of be, you know, not the way that you would have expected it to.
Exactly. And so you're planning the trajectory of your life from as early as 9, 10 years old. And again, if you're in the Caribbean, the options for careers are so limited, right? If you want to live a good life, then you're looking at being a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, or I don't know what else. Those were kind of the three that were fed into our lives. And so growing up, you have this picture of your life and your parents have this picture of your life. And, you know, again, because you want to be set up for the best possible life that you can have. Well, fast forward, my parents pick us up and move us to Canada at 19. So here I am on this trajectory to going to medical school. I've invested all the years, I've taken all the exams, I've gone through all the work. And now we've transitioned from one country to another. Yes. We've transitioned from one culture to another. You've transitioned out of one group of friends to another. And now you're paving your life in a completely different way. But focusing again on the career, my life was heading in one way because that's what I had to do. Then I moved to Canada. And the world just opens and you begin to realize I don't have to take this step anymore. I can make a different choice. And it's terrifying because you've invested so much. You've invested so much time. You've invested so much energy. You've picked a path. But now that you are made wiser, or now that you have more opportunities open to you, I've learned that it is okay to take a detour.
Yes.
And in my final year of university, I started with a degree in human physiology. And in my final year of university, I said, I cannot do this.
Wow. So 3 years of doing human physiology. And then your final year, you're like, geez, I can't do this. Is not what I want. After investing all those years from 9 years old all the way out.
Exactly. Wow, from 9 years old to, I want to say, how old would I have been in third year? 21, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So a solid 11 years. 10, 11 years of one path, one picture, one process. All your friends are in medical school or nursing school. Everyone you know is in the medical field. And you come to the end and you realize, and it's so important for us to take that time to truly be honest with ourselves. Because we need to build a life that we can wake up to every day and say, yes, this is who I want to be. This is where I want to be. And this is how I want to live my life. So many of us are waking up every day into choices that were made for us.
Yeah.
or decisions that we think we couldn't change just because we invested so much already.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, if at 21, I'm at 21 years old and I'm going to be doing a job until 65,
Yeah.
I've invested less time now than I will the rest of my life.
Wow, that is such a huge, way of looking at it, right? So, because you're only looking at, oh my God, I've invested 10, 15 years in this, but you're not thinking about sort of the life you're going to live
Yeah.
after,
Yeah.
and just sort of that picture that you put, there with the 65 and that sort of like retirement, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. If I do a detour here for another 2 or 3 years, it's not going to be that huge a difference, right?
Yeah.
That's such a huge, great perspective for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So many of us are looking at the 21
Mhm.
and we're totally missing the fact that you got a solid 44 years left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this detour that may shave off or add 5 years to the path that I may want to take,
Mhm.
that's definitely when you weigh the balance.
Yeah.
It's not as you're about to spend way more time being unhappy than how much time it will take for you to transition into a path that will bring you 40 years of happiness,
Yeah.
even 30 years of happiness. Honestly, even 10 years of happiness can make such a difference in our lives. And so it was terrifying. It was scary. I couldn't even tell my parents vocally. I wrote it in a letter, left it on their bed, and just waited for the aftermath.
Oh gosh, I know Caribbean parents, and again, for them, it's they've invested in you.
Yes.
Yes. So.
Yeah, and they've invested, and that's such a great point you raised. They've invested in you. They've invested in a story that they want to tell about you. They've invested in that story with their friends, right? Let's look at it. There's a lot of there in this scenario.
Yeah.
What have you invested in your story?
Yes.
What are you investing in what you are going to tell your friends? Are your friends going to be hearing about how amazing this is and how many lives you're impacting and how happy you are about what you're doing? Or are your friends going to be hearing the parts of the story that says, I'm so burnt out, I'm stressed, I hate my job, I don't want to wake up to it every day? So what's the story you want to tell? Their story is theirs, and it's fine. They're probably going to be unhappy about it, and that's okay. I think my parents have only just learned what I do and even how to see it.
Yes.
And if we really like put them on the stand, they'd probably be like, she helps people.
Yeah, basically. No, I get you for sure. And the thing is, and I think that's part of it. Like you're saying that, feeling like because you're unable to maybe necessarily share exactly what it is doesn't mean you shouldn't take the step, right? And I think there's sort of this difference between sort of that one mindset, where you're sort of locked into this is only what I can do from the Caribbean perspective, right? And sort of if you have Caribbean parents, they're going to be thinking similarly, right? But then you again move into sort of this space where it's a more open mindset. We're like, there's so many opportunities, there's so many things I can do. So now you it's like you've gone into the space where you've taken into consideration not just the community, not just sort of this closed, thing that you have to do, but you're now open to, okay, what's going to make me happy? What, should I do that's going to fulfill my life and, the greater good of the world? It's sort of taken into consideration meaning and purpose. And I could see how that would be scary too, right? Because then it's moved out of sort of survival of this is what I have to do to survive within this context. Whereas now you're like, I don't have to worry about surviving. Now I can think about meaning and purpose and fulfilling life and being able to give back. And I could see how that would be challenging and even more difficult to explain to Caribbean parents who are also within sort of that closed mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're hitting right on it. And that is what I love about positive psychology, because it's focusing on how can I thrive in my life? How can I have more positive emotions? How can I build better relationships? How can I live with meaning and purpose and achievement? How can I love what I do so much that I don't even see time flying by? I'm so lost in the work that I'm doing. It's bringing me so much joy, so much pleasure, that I'm able to show up in my life. And by showing up in my life, I get to help others show up in theirs as well. And not just the cultural factor, but generational differences. You know, when we think about, you know, parents, my generation above, like I'm right on the crux of millennials, on that millennial shift. So I definitely can understand and appreciate the necessity of survival that our parents had to do, and why it's become so difficult for them to see a world where I can make a choice that doesn't necessarily always bring the most money or is the most stable.
The truth.
Right? Like I can make a choice. I said the other day, and someone was like, that's so crazy. I said, listen, I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, don't pay me in pennies, pay me in purpose. And I'm not saying that I'm not doing my job, you know, because I need to pay bills. I need to sustain my life. But we're at a stage in life where it's more than just doing a job because it pays me well. Doing that job requires me to love that job, or to be able to see how that job changes other people's life. Because the way I look at the work that we do, I look at it as an assignment. You're literally there with a particular purpose. It doesn't matter what your job is. There's this research that was done the other day, or I don't know, I was listening to on a podcast or something, and they were talking about the janitor at NASA, who he loved his work so much. And, you know, fact check me, anybody, if you know what this is. He loved his work so much because he saw that keeping NASA clean was an active part of getting a man on the moon.
Of course, every little part works, right? Yes.
Right? Like his job was so important. So when he went to work every day, he wasn't going to work to keep the floors clean or to keep the washrooms clean or whatever else he did. He was going to work to play his part in getting a man on the moon.
It's all about the way that you think about it, all about thinking about what role are you playing, you know, in this grand scheme of things. And his why was getting a man on the moon, and he's playing his part as a janitor. It's amazing. Yeah.
And so if we're just going into jobs because this is stable, or my parents wanted me to do this, or this makes sense, we miss the overall assignment. Rather than approaching our work, approaching our choices, approaching our decisions with, how am I on assignment here? What is the assignment here? What am I fulfilling here? Because if we're approaching it that way, we also know when it's time for us to move on. We also know when it's time for us to move to another assignment. Many of us are in jobs for 30, 40 years, not because we want to be there. We're there because we never looked at this as anything differently than something I get up every day to pay my bill, work, sleep, eat, pay bills, die.
Yeah. And you can see how that is, you know, you think about it and you're just saying those words, but then you recognize just how unhappy a person could be if they're just sort of living that life day to day, right? Yeah. And you're right. So many people don't recognize that that's what they're doing, you know, and then one day they wake up and they're like, I'm unhappy, you know, I'm burnt out, and I would want to do something else, but I don't know what that is. And it can be challenging, as you said, to go through that transition. It's like an existential crisis.
Yeah.
You know?
The deathbed memoirs, you know, if only I had, or, you know, the stories that are left. I lived my life doing all of this, but here's what I'd like to leave for you at the end of my life. Seize life, seize the day, take risks, calculated ones. And as you're bringing that up, one more transition happened in my life, just continuing on this path, when I shifted from, just to help people realize that you can make hard decisions, and that's okay. And you can allow yourself to dive in deep with how you're shifting in that transition. So after I made that shift, I finished with my BA in English because I loved English literature. I recognized that the way I wanted to show up in life, the way I wanted to help people was actually in a way that used my voice. It wasn't behind the scenes. It wasn't in a surgery room. It wasn't necessarily with those who were physically hurt. There's something I needed in my heart to advocate for. And I just needed to find a way to make that come to life. And so I transitioned into the legal field.
Yes.
Right. And I worked in, I represented persons who were injured on the job. I did that for about 5 years, I want to say. Yeah, I think about 5 years out of university. I was a licensed paralegal. And I worked for the government. I worked for private agencies as well. Yes. And as I was doing that job, let me tell you, yes, burnout is real. Okay, burnout is real. And the sooner we can recognize that we're heading to the path of burnout, because once you enter that zone of burnout, it's so much harder to pull yourself back.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
We need to be so in tune with ourselves, so in tune with how we're showing up every day in our jobs, in our lives, whatever it may be, so that we can prevent burnout. It is not a good thing, y'all. And if anyone has experienced burnout, you know it is the most painful thing, and it puts you in this internal crisis because you want to show up in your job, but your job is stressing you so much.
I know about this so much, La-Dana. I know about this so much. Oh my gosh. It's tough. It's so hard when burnout hits. It's sort of like, you're good at this job, but it's like you just can't perform. Productivity goes down by 50%, and you start to dig into yourself. And you're like, I'm better than this. Yeah.
When you're a high achiever, and then I think it hurts even more when you're still being successful, because like we're still having successful cases and you're dragging yourself to be able to pull this together. And so you start to even question your ability. Like, you're not bringing your A game, but you're still being successful. And so it's like, okay, so like, what's even the point? You're not motivated to do anything more, because if your minimal is still leading, right? And so going through, but here's the interesting thing. It wasn't even that the job itself was burning me out. And this is what I'm talking about, allowing yourself to recognize, to approach life on assignment and to recognize when your assignment is beginning to shift. When there's a transition coming in your assignment. In that job, what really burned me out was the limitation, my limitation to help.
Got it.
In that job, I was representing people and I was successful in helping them. But the problem is I wasn't the final decision maker. Right? And so someone still got to decide the extent to which this person got what they needed. But here's what I recognized along the way. I recognized a lot of these persons I was supporting had physical injuries, and they were developing secondary issues, mental health issues. And I became fascinated by that. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is we don't get curious enough about our lives, right? I always talk about becoming so curious about your life that at every stage you begin to recognize when something's shifting.
Yeah.
Because you're beginning to think, I'm being stressed out, not because the job is hard, not because I don't love what I do. I'm being stressed out because I feel so limited in my ability to help. Because I recognize issues are being developed that are beyond my ability to support.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hurting me to not be able to help them this way. And this is the genesis of my studies in mental health.
Wow. Look at that. Just look at that. As you said, the curiosity,
Yes.
being able to identify. And I think a lot of times, based on what you're saying there, you felt limited in what you could do. So then the mind, right away said, oh, looking at the situation from sort of these multiple, views, and you were able to be curious about what else is going on in these people's lives because you weren't being challenged, right?
Yeah.
You weren't being challenged. You're just like, okay, what else is here? And being able to notice that this thing that you would want to help with is not being addressed, or you couldn't address, at that time, which sort of, it sounds leaded you into, okay, how can I do that?
Yes, exactly. So it got me to a place was, okay, now I recognize. So I started this path. I know I want to help people. And that's why, to me, when I'm raising a 5-year-old, I have a 5-year-old daughter. And I know the constant question is, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And that be, what do you want to be always ends up in a career, right? I think the bigger question is, who do I want to be when I grow up? Right? Who do I want to be? Because once I know who I want to be, then I'll be able to leave myself open to satisfy that with a job. So that rather than growing up to do a job becomes a part of who I'm growing up to be. That becomes
I love that.
one way.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, my job becomes one way I get to fulfill who I am. So who I am isn't defined by what I do. What I do is a part of who I am. So like reversing the psychology on that question. So who do I want to be when I grow up? I want to be someone who impacts other people's lives.
Yes.
What's it going to take for me to do that? Not, I want to be a doctor. Nah, a doctor can impact lives. How does a doctor impact lives? Right? Is that the way I want to impact lives? Is it being a teacher? Is it being a janitor? Is it being whatever? Right? That one part of my life. We are multifaceted. Our minds, our bodies, our souls, our relationships, our jobs. Those are all parts of who we are. But I find we spend so much time picking the career and not enough time deciding who I want to be. So that I am fulfilling that in my job, not the other way around.
Yes. No, and it's so vital that, that flip that you made there. And, it's also what we try to teach, in counseling. Identity, who are you, and how does that play into the other aspects of your life, right? Instead of, as you said, trying to be like, I need to get this job, and then this job is going to tell the world who I am, right?
Precisely.
It's definitely the way that you indicated, and it's an approach, as as you said, as a wellness coach, and myself as a counselor, hopefully we can share that with our viewers so they can recognize it's important to be able to build yourself up, to be able to identify who you are as a person, and then by being able to develop that and being confident in that, it can lead you to what it is that you need to do in life, whether it's career, relationships, and make these other decisions, for sure.
Absolutely. And more in my life, I'm realizing, and I help clients recognize that too, just as you said, that is our existential question. If we don't know who we are, nothing else in our life is going to make sense. There's going to be a constant striving to fill that void, because that is the first void to be filled. That is what decides what grows out of it. And so developing that curiosity, I find, also helps when we make mistakes. Because rather than looking at, because not every transition is going to work out. Like, let's just be real.
This is true. This is true.
Just because it felt like a good transition right now doesn't mean it's going to work out all the time. But rather than looking at that transition as a failure, look at that transition as something that could teach you something else about your life.
Yes.
So becoming curious about what I could learn here and how I can take that into the next phase. Because now I know I'm not good at that. And
Yes.
okay.
So using it as a growth opportunity, right? Yes, trial by fire.
Yes. Because if you think about it, none of us have a manual on our lives. So we're all building the manual as we go, which means that there's no way we can expect that we have everything mapped out. So rather than think, oh my goodness, that didn't work out. Yeah, that's okay. That's how we now know when you're doing research and you go, okay, that hypothesis didn't work out. Now I need to reassess my hypothesis, come to a new conclusion, start a new experiment, look at it a different way. But so many of us beat ourselves up and stop ourselves from making those transitions because we're so afraid that it won't work out. Okay, it didn't work out. What can we learn from this part that didn't work out so that the next step can work out even better?
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, all of this with us so far, La-Dana. Like, it's been so inspirational, your journey, moving from sort of wanting to be a doctor at 9 years old, right? And planning for that, and then getting to this place, where you're like, I'm in this new country. All these opportunities are here for me. And you're in your third year and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what I want my life to be like. And you switch now to the legal field, and you're impacting lives. It's like you're almost there. It's like you're, 50% of the way, and you're making that impact, but you recognize you're limited with the impact that you can make. And you're in sort of this existential place where you're trying to find out, okay, I am helping people. I thought this is where it would be, and then it's sort of like you're saying, okay, fine, I have to give myself permission to look deeper. What is it that I want? Who am I? What kind of impact do I want to make? And then you said, you know what? It sounds like these individuals are not just having issues physically, they're also having mental health challenges, and recognizing that you would want to be able to assist them in that way too. And then you regroup and, change your path, and you get into sort of this space of mental health, and you're killing it. You're really sharing this positivity with everyone. And even here, I've truly enjoyed hearing you sort of talk about what you're doing, and you're really passionate about it, and you command attention. People listen to you, and it does speak to sort of the passion that you have for what you do. Yeah, for sure.
That's great. And again, that has been the benefit of taking a detour and making a transition. So after, like you had introduced, we started our counseling degree at the same time, same amount of years. I got to the practicum and I got burned out again. And I got burnt out again because here's the interesting thing. I didn't have the tools I needed to create the boundaries that were necessary in the mental health field. Now, when you're working in this field and you're supporting clients, it's incredibly important to have those boundaries. So that, not boundaries in the sense of professional boundaries, just the ability to release that pain. Because when you're in that space with someone who's hurting and you're walking alongside them without having the right tools in place, and I know you've been doing this work, so you understand, without having those tools in place to help you separate yourself from that pain that they're feeling, so that you can help them without yourself either being burnt out or, getting that compassion fatigue, just being, completely tired of hearing about all the hard things people are experiencing. And within that practicum, after I started, I was like, no, this cannot be the path for me.
Yeah.
There has to be another way for me. And again, right, we're talking about investing time, money, right? Like, and my husband says, it seems like you have a final year situation at hand. He's like, you should write a book called In the Final Year, because that seems to be the points in your life where you're like, no, I am not going to finish here. And I remember my supervisor was so upset.
Yeah.
Because she's like, she could not believe that I'm wasting all this gift, this natural ability to enter that space and create that space for healing and restoration. And, you know, I had to get to the point where, even though, again, as you make transitions, you're going to disappoint some people.
Yeah.
You may even disappoint yourself. But it comes down to, again, how much time am I gonna let this disappointment last 40 years? Yeah. Or am I gonna let this disappointment last this moment? Maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. And I made the choice to finish with a different degree. Yeah. So I finished again with a different degree. And my professors, everyone was like, we can't believe that you're making this shift. And I'm like, you know what? I recognize right now that this is the shift that I need. I need this because I don't have what I need to get to the next step. And let me tell you about the power of the detour.
Yes. Tell me about the power of the detour.
Listen, I want to tell you about the power of the detour. Because when I made that shift, I even left my job as a paralegal, and I literally went after an opportunity that felt ridiculous. I have to say ridiculous, because this was being a wellness program advisor in another division of the government, and I'm in the legal field.
Yes.
So sometimes we're looking at our qualifications, we're looking at our experience, and we're thinking this doesn't apply. Let me tell you, it depends on what lens you're looking at your qualifications and experiences through. True. And it comes down to how you're going to tell your story. Well, let me tell you, I nailed that job. And I not only nailed that job, but I was promoted within 2 years to leading that team. Okay. And so when I talk about allowing yourself to transition and be on assignment, that making that hard choice, I remember my manager was like, I can't believe you're making this change. I was leaving a job that I was 15 minutes away from to a job that I was an hour and a half away from.
Wow.
3 hours of traveling every day, Northern Ontario, through snow squalls, through winter storms. Because I'm telling you, when you feel like you're living on purpose, nothing stands in the way of that.
It's so true. It's so true. You found your why, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Yeah.
Let me tell you, you jump out of bed full of energy. You go to bed with ideas. I'm jumping up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm finally living on purpose, and I'm seeing that purpose play out in my life, and I'm allowing myself to travel that path. So I said, you know what? Right now, I love the program development end when it comes to mental health. I love building the programs. I love empowering practitioners to deliver programs. And so I said, this is where I'm going to allow myself to transition. I'm going to allow this transition because I recognize that there is a new assignment on my life. There's a new assignment. And shortly after that, just as I got promoted, y'all, my husband got reassigned to Washington, United States from Toronto.
Yes, another move.
When Tricia introduced and said, like, yo, my life has just been revolving transitions. And I think because that's happened so much more in my life, it makes me so much more comfortable with the fact that even when things don't look like they're going to work out, and I'm going to pause here for a second because I'm a Christian, y'all. Because of my faith in God, I know that things will work out because he has put me on assignment. And because he's put me on assignment, I know he's going to give me the tools I need to make that happen. Well, when I detoured, When I detoured and came here to Washington and had to chill for a year, listen, I can't just sit still. I grow where I'm planted.
Yes.
I'm like, I cannot spend a year of my life just sitting still and hanging back. So I said, God, what's my next assignment? And that's when I signed up for the positive psychology and well-being certification.
Nice.
And I'm telling you, this is what, and I know I did a roundabout to come back to the power of the detour. I'm talking about the power of the detour. That detour I took into getting that certification as a positive psychology and well-being coach, one, it allowed me to launch a platform that's helping me to impact lives across the world. I'm meeting people that I would never have otherwise met had it not been for that detour. I've gained confidence in the work that I can offer because I made that detour. Okay. And most importantly, I now have the tools that can help me go back. Not even go back. I won't even say go back. That will help me continue the assignment God placed on my life. And so now I'm finishing my master's in clinical mental health.
Hallelujah.
Because I now have what I need to be effective in the assignment that's on my life. And so I'm saying that to say we're so afraid of the detours in our lives, but those detours can actually give us what we need to fulfill the assignment on our lives. It can give us what we need to even do what we thought we wanted to do even better. It can give us connections that we would have otherwise never made. So don't be afraid of the detour as you're transitioning in your life. Recognize that your life is an ongoing story and every single chapter counts. And that's what I've learned. So when I think about transitions, like I said, going back to my motto, for such a time as this. And if I'm looking at life that way, if you're looking at life that way, the detours that you take then are on purpose.
I love
and
that.
You can find meaning in those detours. You can find things to pull from them, because now I'm looking back and I'm at this stage and I'm like, wow. A year ago, I never felt fully equipped to do this. A year later. So what I'm talking about, 40 years, I could have finished, continued, and spent maybe 1 year doing this job and going, you know what, this is not for me, and quit. But I took a year detour. And in that year, I've been able to do things I would have otherwise never done. And now I can finish my assignment way more equipped than when I had begun. Don't be afraid of the detour. That's the power of the detour.
Oh man, that's just so amazing. I love it. And you really summarized it well there, in the end, just sort of, giving sort of those tips surrounding why not giving up on the detour is so important, right? And, your motto of for such a time as this is so, crucial, in the sense that you're using sort of that story, Esther's story, as a way to be able to look at your life and how, it's, I guess, been uncovered, if you want to call it that. Like, you've experienced, as you said, so many transitions. And instead of being negative about that, you've chosen to recognize, what you can learn from those detours, as you said, those transitions, and then being able to, recognize how have these transitions impacted not only you, but others. And then how did it lend itself to then the end goal, right? And that purpose that you've always wanted, to accomplish and to be able to spread to others. So it's great to have listened to your story today, and I'm sure our listeners out there, will love it as well. And the last question we have for you, I am sure people out there are going to want to contact you to find out more about, what you do and, how they can, I guess, catch this wellness positivity bug that you're sending, right? How can people contact you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I've been having so much fun on Reels lately. It's like the single greatest thing Instagram has put together. So you can find me on Instagram.
Mhm.
And you can find me at Mindset Unwell with La-Dana on Instagram. You can also find me online, www.mindsetunwell.com. Those are the two ways. You can also find me on Facebook at Mindset on Well. Yeah, which is intentional. I feel like once we have our mindset on well, it kind of keeps ourselves on that trajectory and we become intentional about seeking and supporting our wellness every single day.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you again for, being with us and for sharing, such great inspirational, information to keep us positive, keep your mind in a space where it's positive, your well-being is secure. And then, like you said, if you're thinking about your purpose, you're thinking about who you are as a person, then you can then make life decisions that are going to set you up to fulfill that purpose. So thank you again for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's incredible. I've been enjoying all the stories that you've been sharing on here. And it's awesome that you're creating that platform because I think it's important for other persons to realize that you're not alone in your transitions and that it's okay to work through that. And I'm hoping many more people reach out to Tricia because she is incredible. Not just because she's my cousin, but because we spent so much time and I've just been watching her grow. And it's just great that she's able and you're able to pour into the lives of so many people around the world.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. All right. Well, you've got it, guys. Like, share, subscribe, and check out La-Dana at Mindset on Well. Okay, take care. Until next time.